Welcome back, everyone, to the VS Code Insiders podcast, your behind-the-scenes look at your favorite code editor, VS Code. And today, I have two amazing, spectacular guests, some of my best friends in the entire world, Brigit Murtaugh and Josh Spicer from the VS Code team. How's it going?
Going great. How are you?
I am so excited to be talking to you today because we're going to be talking all about coding agents and all the amazing stuff that's been happening in it. But before we do there, Brigit, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Brigit. I'm a product manager on the VS Code team here at Microsoft. I get to work on a ton of really cool features. Specifically in Copilot, I work on our Copilot coding agent integration, and I work on our next edit suggestions experience.
And how about you, Josh?
Sweet. Yeah. And I am Josh. I have been on the team for about a year as an engineer. I've worked on a wide range of things in the past year. Worked on some, remote SSH bits, worked on some enterprise policy, and now I'm working on a lot of the coding agent work that we're doing now.
Awesome. Now you're also world famous for your, what I like to call the Tatooine theme inside of VS Code. That's what I've officially named it. It's called like solar something. What's it called?
Yeah, so it's called Sharp Solarized, I believe is what I named it. I have heard it be called like the theme that looks like a Kindle. I've now heard like the Tatooine theme. So there's a whole bunch of names for it. I had actually forked this theme from another great theme that was also like a solarized kind of name to it. And I loved it, so I wanted to extend it. And now every like release note, I get at least a message or two, not about the work I'm doing, but about my theme specifically. So, yeah.
Very true. If you're watching on YouTube or Spotify right now, you will see that. I will be putting it up. It's my default theme. Did you know that? It's my new default theme.
I did not know that. That's very exciting. Mm-hmm. Nice. If there's anything you want me to add, let me know.
Okay, I will. Yeah, there's some things I think I have in general. I love it. And I love it also that it really upsets Pierce whenever I share my screen and we do stuff. He hates, they're very divisive. He hates it. So I love that he hates it, but I love that I love it. And yes,
I love knowing that Pierce hates it. That is good info that I wasn't aware of.
Exactly. Yeah, it just gets him. Well, let's get into it because for me, when I was introduced to agent mode inside of VS Code many moons ago, it revolutionized how I worked. And then when coding agents came about, like that were not agent mode, which I want to clarify here, that also revolutionized how I work again. But I think many people who are brand new, not even just to using VS Code and using chat and using agent mode, they may not actually know even what coding agents are, like what ours are, like what the integration is. So what is a coding agent and how exactly is that different than agent modes inside of VS Code?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I think when, coding agents kind of came on the scene, we had like the CLI based, like the TUI based coding agents came on the scene. I know the VS Code team was incredibly excited about it. It's a really cool concept. We have coding agent now from GitHub, where essentially, and how we kind of do this in VS Code, is that you have some unit of work that you want to kind of ship off and delegate to be done on your behalf. So it isn't going to be, the work won't be performed on your machine, like with agent mode, for instance. It's kind of, this work will be done in an isolated environment. You can kind of, go and check in on it every now and again, see its progress. If you're happy with it, you can kind of pull that down, or you can make a pull request against that change. If you're not happy with it, you can either prompt the coding agent again to continue working asynchronously on it, or you can even, take some of those changes down to your local machine and edit them yourself. So it's a very flexible way to work, especially if you have n number of tasks that are all independent. You can kind of, divvy them up between your coding agents and get a lot more work done. So pretty cool.
Now, I feel like they also have a lot of names. I think, Brigit, you said there was like 28 different ways. Like, so what are some other things that people may actually like hear when we talk about it? Because I call it about 20 different things.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to see how the naming kind of evolves. I kind of think it speaks to as well how people already work, because one of the things that I've worked on a lot in VS Code is our remote development experiences. Then it felt natural for me to call, when you're delegating something to a coding agent, I'm like, oh, that's the remote agent, because it's not something that I'm actively thinking on, or it's not like in my local machine and I can just go delegate a task to it like Josh was mentioning. But you might have heard terms like remote agent, background agent, asynchronous agent. cloud agent. And I think to an extent it depends too, because sometimes coding agent could refer to something that is on your local machine or on a remote machine. So that can also vary based on actual implementation. But for Copilot coding agent, for instance, like that is happening in the cloud. So I could step away from my machine. I could turn off my machine and the agent is still going to be working on that task that I delegated it.
Very cool. And so I guess when we think about it, even with agent mode, like in chat, I mean, it is an agent. Like it's just kind of different. When we're talking about coding agents, we often are talking about that asynchronous work, things that are firing off. So for example, I just literally did this in my feedback flow app that I did. I went into VS Code and I created a new coding. I went into the agent mode and I said, I'm going to do some work, but I'm going to delegate it. So normally in the flow, I would type in, I want to do this thing, and agent mode would get to work on my branch, on my local machine. But instead of doing that, I said, hey, I want to add a checkbox here to have individual reports versus combined reports for this like analyzer that I have. And instead of saying send, I said delegate to coding agent. And when I did that, things happened.
Yeah.
Not
so
on
what
my
happened
machine.
There, yeah, was that we sent all of the context from your chat up to the cloud, right? Up to your coding agent. And that work was performed not on your machine. And what you saw was some information coming back from the coding agent of exactly what it was performing. But it allows you to continue working on maybe some other more complex task on your local machine. Well, you kind of delegate adding new checkboxes or whatever you were doing in your application to a secondary coding agent that can do the work on your behalf. And that's what we're really excited about, I think, in VS Code, kind of that flexibility.
Yeah, what are the use cases like inside of VS Code or even outside of VS Code? Because like, I could go to github.com and also start one of these as well. Like, what are the use cases that you're seeing for yourself on the team, but also like our engineers and developers using VS Code, using these for?
Yeah, right. So I think it's still like super open-ended exactly how folks are going to use these tools, which I think is the exciting part, working on this right now, right? Is that we're actively experimenting every month on our release notes. You'll see a lot of changes in this entire experience, which is very exciting. We're getting a lot of feedback. The entire team is self-hosting on it every day. So everyone's kind of using it a little differently. The way I like to use it is really if I have a small isolated issue that's open that I think can be handled nicely by coding agent. That's the main use case that I'm seeing these days for it.
Yeah, and I was going to say that resonates with me. I think something that's cool is that in VS Code, because we are being really flexible of trying to meet developers where they are, of however they want to use these tools, we want to provide those different entry points. We have this extension called the GitHub pull request extension that we also have coding agent integration within. So when Copilot creates a PR on your behalf, it'll show up in a special section in the PR view there. And something I think that's cool is if you open up issues in a repo or you just want to look at all the issues in a repo, you can see that from within VS Code as well. And we have an icon where you can just assign that to Copilot. And then from there, you'll be able to just have Copilot work on it in the background while you do some other work. And I found that to be nice because sometimes it's like, if I'm tracking something that I'm doing either for like a personal repo that I have or for something that I filed maybe for the team in general. And I'm like, I wonder if the coding agent can try tackling that. It's really convenient just being able to pop over and assign that to Copilot too. So kind of have these chat-driven flows, and we also have these PR-driven flows.
Yeah, and I think my favorite integration these days is if there's a to-do comment in your code, we now show a little code action right next to that line that allows you to delegate that specific comment to coding agent, and it'll use the context of the file that you've chosen, as well as the actual comment, of course, and you can just, as you're working on some other issue, you kind of see this comment now that was maybe there for 3 or 4 years or something. And now you can just delegate that and go check all of like the results, the PR that it creates at any point after that. But I think it's really cool that we have a lot of new ways to experiment with this tool that we have never seen before.
Yeah, I think a lot of people may have seen this for the very first time at Build this year when Satya was on stage and he had the GitHub issue there and then he assigned it to Copilot, which for all intents and purposes is that kind of was the original flow. But what you both just described are many different flows. So can we step actually through each of those different flows of where a developer today would fire off these coding agents inside of VS Code and the implications of how is that different from creating an issue and assigning it. Because I think, Brigit, you just said, yeah, you can pull up your issues and assign them from there, and then it will create a branch off of main and go. But there's many places and many new places, especially in 103 and 104 that just dropped recently, but they kind of do work a little bit different than that. So can we walk through each of those to kind of get the under the hood of what's happening?
Yeah, I think one of my other kind of flows that I use that I know a lot of folks on our team actually do is, to have a successful coding agent, kind of session to actually get the result that you're looking for at the end, especially for a code base like VS Code, you need a lot of context, right? There's a lot of information that needs to go into the task so that the coding agent actually will do this successfully. And one way that I found that that has been really helpful is to use ask mode inside of VS Code. You can have a conversation essentially with Copilot. You can explain exactly what you're looking for. So maybe you have a very vague issue. Maybe it's, 1 or 2 lines from a teammate and you know what to do. But if you just assign that issue to Copilot, it's not going to really understand it the way that you understand it. So by having a conversation in ask mode, you're really able to kind of nail down, these are the files that would be interesting, that would be relevant to this task. This needs to work on Windows and Mac. So make sure that, kind of have those considerations in mind. Maybe there's, all sorts of variables depending on the kind of issue you're solving. And then from there, after you're confident that, you and Copilot are on the same page, you guys kind of get it, like where everyone is understanding the issue. From that point, you hit the delegate to the coding agent button. So the one right in chat, right to the left of the send button, the normal send button. And then from there, it'll send up all the context, the entire conversation, verbatim. You can see it on the pull request, exactly what we're sending as context. You can see that. And I find that to be a lot more successful just in a day-to-day kind of not super trivial issue, say.
No, that makes a lot of sense, because I think how I was doing it in the early days was working, defining an issue, creating an issue, assigning an issue, and going. But the one thing that I've noticed is often I might be working on a project, and when I'm working on a feature or I'm working on something, I'm already on a branch. And what I've noticed is that when I hit that delegate to coding agent, there's a lot of different pop-ups and different questions, because it does, like you said, Josh, it sends the context of everything in there, but it also gives you a lot of flexibility as a developer and options about how that thing is performed.
Yeah, and I think, like you mentioned too, you can kind of do as much or as little planning as you want. It's like when Josh said, hey, there's times I really want to make sure I'm on the same page as Copilot. Like generally that's where you want to be. But if it's something I found too, sometimes it's a little bit more exploratory of I'm like, hey, I have this repo that I use for different demos and examples. Help identify some languages or scenarios that aren't included in this code yet. And then Copilot can kind of identify that. We could come up with a plan. We can use the to-dos that we have in chat now. And then I can say, okay, go work on the first to-do or go work on all of these to-dos.
Yeah. And that also kind of reminded me, we also have a feature that I added a couple months ago that if you have, pending changes in your workspace, it'll actually ask you, do you want to push those changes before you start the coding agent session? So you can even write some of the implementation yourself to really get it on the right track. You can say, kind of stub out the work, saying, in this file, this is where you should do X, and in this file, you should do Y. You can push up your changes and your chat context, and then the coding agent has a ton to work on, right? It's not like it's going to go in there blind. It has a lot of information of how to solve the problem in the way that you want it to be solved.
I use both of these in a lot of different mechanisms. Like, so I'll kind of tell from real world, because I use a lot of everything that we have, but a lot of coding agent. So when I have a spark of idea, but I have no time to work on it, that's when I'm like fire and forget go. Like that checkbox thing, I was literally coming up with a presentation that I'm doing in a week for how I use all this stuff internally and how I built this app. And I was like, oh, I need to add this feature because I want to show it. So I just went in and I just fired off, here's an idea, go, right? And just pull request open, no issue, just top of mind, go, right? But to the other thing that you were just talking about, Brigit, was like the planning, which I've done that a lot of that, like planning, going back and then send it all off, because I have this big idea and I have time to work it out, but I don't have time to work on it. And then the other thing, Josh, so like this is how it like trickles down, which I think the flexibility part of it as it's evolved is, hey, I have been working on this, but it's 5:00 and I gotta go. I don't, we've all been in that state where we're working on a bug, we're fixing a feature, we're just prototyping something cool. And you're like, well, I kind of want to keep working on this, but I really want to go eat dinner, go spend time with my family. And that's when I'm like, send it off to the coding agent and let it cook overnight or whatever. I mean, it doesn't take that long, but like, let it cook while I'm gone. Yeah. Right. And as a PM, AKA all I'm doing is I have like 5 minutes in between meetings. So I'm just like, okay, fire and then review and then fire off another one. So I can code in quotes throughout the day there. But I have noticed that all of these enhancements are there. But one of the biggest enhancements that I'd love for y'all to dive deeper into is that sort of integration of how we interact with the coding agent while it's going. Because as I mentioned early on, it was just assign it to an issue. And now I could view the session and see what it was doing in the cloud. But I feel like now it's a lot more interactive and evolved than ever.
Yeah. So kind of how this evolved, right, is maybe 3 or 4 months ago now, we really did the basic integration of like, you can start a session, right? You can kind of push up some context. It wasn't as complete as what we have now, but you could push up some context from VS Code and it would start the session. And then that was kind of where the experience ended in VS Code. There were some integration points, but it wasn't, complete, like it wasn't the spot that we envisioned it being in. And over the past month or two, we've invested a lot in new extension APIs that we've been playing with so that us, as well as other folks in the future, can integrate with like our native chat widgets that we use. So the same chat widgets that we have for, local agent mode and things of that sort, kind of making it feel like it's very integrated and tightly connected to VS Code while still allowing that power of, actually delegating to an agent. So that's what we've been working on for the past couple months, and we'll be continuing to work on for, I think, a decent amount of time in the future.
And if people want to like find that, like, where is that inside of VS Code? Like, obviously there's a delegate button, but like, where's all the other stuff? Because you said there's like an extension, there's stuff like where do people go? Yeah.
So you'll definitely need the GitHub pull request extension. So that's where that's kind of like the first consumer of this API. That isn't out for all folks to use yet because we're still iterating on it. But if you have the pull request extension and the chat extension, you're most of the way there. The only thing that you need is now in the latest stable release, there is a VS Code setting, chat session view. If you search that in your VS Code settings, you can turn this on. And then you'll get a new view on the left-hand side that is kind of your control center. You can kind of see everything that's happening involving your local chats and coding agents and things of that sort. So that's a great kind of high-level overview of what's going on. And then from there, it'll enable these chat integrations where you can kind of expand out into one of these chat sessions.
And we have docs as well, where we keep all of this updated. So if you follow along with the latest release notes, you'll see all the great features that the team's working on. And then we also keep a doc in the Copilot section of the VS Code docs updated, all dedicated to our Copilot coding agent integration. And we'll make sure we have all the latest settings and screenshots in there so folks can follow along.
Very cool. Now, where is this? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and then that's going to be also in our latest release notes. We always also mention this stuff.
So where is this going? What is next to kind of bring this to a head? Because a lot of work has been done here. What are maybe some, now that so if you're at 18 minutes, now you're invested in understanding like what's next. So, like if you've listened to this podcast for this long, and this is the Insiders podcast, even though we talk a lot of stuff in Sable, like what are some things that maybe the team is working on? Everything is tracked in the open, things like that. Like you talked to some APIs and things, like where are things headed next, or as much as you could, give us, I guess, behind the scenes.
Yeah. So kind of exactly what I was saying is that we're working on an extension API, right? We are using this extension API in the pull request extension for the GitHub coding agent, right? And kind of like my vision for it is that any extension that has a coding agent that they can contribute to VS Code would be able to, through our APIs, to really have that nice, tightly integrated experience with VS Code. And that gives you so much when you say want to reference a file or, just do work locally and with an agent. It's nice to use one tool instead of having to use 2 or 3 different tools, or maybe like a web browser, for some of it. So that's really the goal, to keep the developer loop tight, to be able to work on a task, and then you can delegate some tasks and everything's unified in one spot.
Very cool. All right. Anything else from the two of you that you want to give insight into, tell developers, have them go try out, anything like that before we wrap up?
Yeah. Well, I would just say we have a lot that we've been working on over the past month. So please read the release notes and try all the settings that aren't enabled for everyone. We'll slowly roll these out as time continues, but we keep things behind settings at the beginning, just to gather feedback. So if you are interested, please turn on our settings and try it out and let us know what you think.
Yeah, just jumping off of that, getting feedback is super helpful to us, because it's, like Josh mentioned, it's evolving just how within our own team we use this stuff and how we're seeing users adopt it and think about these things. So hearing the kind of workflows people are trying and seeing the limits to which people push it and how can we expand it further, I think getting all that feedback and seeing more about people's scenarios is super helpful. So we're super excited to hear everyone's feedback.
That's awesome. I've been loving just like the amazing work that the team has been doing, because I'm not only just firing off, these tasks to delegate, but I'm having conversations, right? Just like I have conversations with agent mode and chat, I'm having conversations with these background agents as they're finishing up work or stopping their work or reviewing work. It allows me as a developer to have a lot of work streams happening at the same time. I might be actually working on code, things might be firing off, I might be reviewing code, I might be seeing sessions that happen. And, I think it's so amazing to see, if you have 5 ideas in your head, you could be working on all 5 of them at the same time. Like, you are working side by side these agents. And so when I say like, we're working on this, right? It's like, we're working on it together, right? I think it's true. That's how I see it. Like the code that it's right is because I've guided it down that path of the code that I want through things like agents.md and Copilot instructions and all these amazing things that kind of give it insight. So it's great to hear the where it started, where it's at, and where it's going. And when, of course, new things come out and they trickle out, we'll be sure to have you all back on the podcast as well. So Brigit, Josh, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was great.
Yes, it's fun. And you'll live my dream as a podcaster for the first time. It's exciting.
There you go. First time, but not the last time. And of course, we'll put links to everything that we talked about down in the show notes if you're in your favorite podcast application or watching on Spotify or YouTube. So make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast application. Give us a 5-star review. We love that. Tell all of your coworkers about it. That's going to do it for this VS Code Insiders podcast. Until next time, happy coding.